Some new insight from Vice President Kamala Harris, 66 days since her inauguration. She had a very busy week, last night criticizing Georgia's new voting law. And earlier in the week, she was appointed as the administration point person on the border crisis. Harris also swore in 2 cabinet members and visited a COVID vaccination site in Florida. In one interview, she spoke about the scientists who helped develop the vaccines. She took a look back.
I think about people like Dr. Kizzy Corbett, the scientist who contributed to the discovery of the vaccine that I actually took and so many of us have taken. And my mother was a scientist. My mother had 2 goals in her life: to raise her 2 daughters and end breast cancer. And she would actually take us to the lab with her often. And I watched how these scientists, they have this passion, it's a deep passion, to improve human life and condition and to see what is possible.
And joining me now is Susan Whiting. She chairs the board of the National Women's History Museum. And with a big welcome to you, you know, as I think about what we just heard there, some vice presidents shy away from the spotlight, but that doesn't seem to be the case with Kamala Harris. As the first female biracial vice president, how important in your mind is her visibility?
Oh, it's incredibly important. Because what we know is that if you can see someone, you can be like them. You can picture that opportunity ahead of you. And so all the firsts that she's had are things we need to celebrate and talk about and write and make sure that people understand that that possibility exists for them. So the more examples we have like that, the better.
Which I think will lead into this next question I ask you, because in the interview that we just heard, the vice president made it a point to name one of those scientists, Dr. Kizzy Corbett, a black scientist there, as a key player behind the COVID-19 vaccines. Why, in your mind, is it important that the vice president points out accomplishments like those of Dr. Corbett?
Well, it's very important because now we know her name.
Yeah.
And that's an incredible example, but there are so many other scientists, for example, but women who've really led in many different ways whose names we do not know. And when you don't know that all those people have contributed to what makes, you know, our American history and what we're doing currently happen, you don't understand the possibility and respect really the accomplishment. So that it's incredibly important to call this out.
You know, something, I've heard the saying that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. She mentioned her mom and her mom's efforts to cure breast cancer and looking back really with admiration at her mother. This is a big part of your work, right, Susan? I mean, studying the accomplishments of other women, those who helped pave the way?
Yes. In our work with the National Women's History Museum, that's what we do. We really shine a light on all the examples we can find and ones we're still discovering of women's accomplishments. And it's meant to inspire women, obviously, and girls, but it's also incredibly important for boys and men to understand and participate in this because it is our history. It's not just women's history. And so showing these examples and making it possible for people to understand what's happened in our collective history is really critically important. And mothers, we all have one,
right,
are a way to connect to that.
Yeah. Something I want to focus on, which is that your museum installed the artwork, Vice President Kamala Harris glass ceiling breaker. It was at the Lincoln Memorial last month. Tell me about that.
Oh, that's such an exciting opportunity for us. So in collaboration with BBH, which is a creative agency in New York, and with Chief, an organization of leading women, we put this amazing piece of art that by literally shattering glass creates a portrait. And it is a portrait clearly at a moment where the vice president had shattered many glass ceilings and a whole list of firsts. So we put this piece of art at the foot of the Lincoln Memorial and it was there for about 5 days. And we had reactions from literally all over the world. People wrote about it. I think it's inspired a lot of people, and it was both an interesting and tactile way where you could see this big accomplishment.
Yeah. 25 years you're celebrating the museum there. We're approaching the end of Women's History Month. Anything in the upcoming final remaining days of March that you want to note?
Sure. Well, because we are the Women's History Museum, every day is Women's History Day in our work, and we are a virtual museum at womenshistory.org. And we have lots of programming this month for Women's History Month, so you can see everything from the reading of a book for young learners to opportunities to participate in upcoming exhibits about women's history.
It's worth checking out. Susan Whiting, thank you for your time. I appreciate you and your efforts. And that's going to do it for me on this Saturday edition of Weekends with Alex Witt. Join me again tomorrow at noon Eastern. Up next, Jeff Bennett sits in for Yasmin Vasugian with former Ambassador Christopher Hill on Biden's challenges overseas in Afghanistan, China, and North Korea.